If you look around my office, you might realize I have kind of a love for dark, twisted cartoons. And a lot of that may be because I grew up with a lot of dark, twisted cartoons. Now, I'm not talking about the ones like Batman or ones that were meant for older kids. I'm talking about the ones that were meant for little kids, and they probably should have been made for little kids. And I loved the hell out of them. I enjoyed how much they scared me. I loved how every time you got through one, you felt a little tougher. So I'm doing a series reacting and reviewing them. We're gonna analyze how creative they are, how dark they are, and if the dark twisted tone was warranted. So join me in taking a look at some dark tunes. Well, I just saw the most miserable thing I've ever watched for this show. Oh, don't worry, that's not a bad thing. The Mask was released in 2002. It's been requested for a while, and by God, I can see why. Let's take a look. So I should point out, this is not a particularly twisted episode, but it is definitely a dark episode. Like, one of the darkest I've ever reviewed on this show. The creator of the show was surprised it made it to air. It was like that dark. While there are comedic elements, it's not played that hard for laughs. It's actually one of the few serious Courage the Cowardly Dog episodes, which wasn't often. It's also one of the few episodes that's a two-parter. It takes up the full 22 minutes running time, where usually they'll have 11 minutes for a different short. But this one was such a big story, they had to give it the whole 22 minutes. The backgrounds on this show, as I've talked about before, are very colorful but have very heavy shadows as well, and they create these great contrasts of these bright reds and bright greens, but these really harsh shadows you don't see in animated shows that often. If something's dark, it's usually blended with cooler colors like blue or maybe even like a brown or something like that, something dingy. Courage always went for louder colors for the shadows to play against, which it really makes it quite striking. Look at that thing. Look at this setup. Even if you never heard of this show before, you would just look at this layout and be like, what is this about? What is going to happen in this 22 minutes? This mask is really beautifully terrifying because the eyes and the nose and the mouth, they're all very soft features. It's like something you'd see out of an anime. A beautiful woman would have these features, but because it's exaggerated so large and it's on this mask that is also comedically huge, it's very unsettling. You immediately have no idea what to expect from this character, which creates a great mystery.
Dogs are evil.
I love she just carries a sink with her, pipe and all. Chaplin just joined me because he loves the parts where dogs get beat up. With that said, there's several episodes where Courage gets mangled or beat up or things are dropped on him, but in this episode, just right off the bat, you see how he looks being beaten by this thing, and it's already far more aggressive, far more gruesome than I've seen, at least, in any of the other episodes. It already sets just this kind of different tone in a show that already mixes with a lot of very dark tones.
Pleased to meet you. I'll let you two alone to play.
Once again, the owners are wonderfully naive, like he is literally being beaten by this thing. She has a sink in her hand, and she thinks that Courage made a friend.
My name is Kitty, and I've come from the wrong side of the tracks.
So we find out this character's name is Kitty. Big surprise, we're gonna find out she's a cat, and she's concerned about her friend Bunny. Take a guess what she's gonna be, and she's in cahoots with this gangster who happens to be a dog, which again, this is just kind of how this world works. A dog can be an animal you walk on a leash, or it can be walking on two legs like any normal person. Like Goofy and Pluto, if we accept it there, why not here? But because of this gangster named Mad Dog, she clearly has a prejudice against dogs.
He treats her like she's his slave.
My kind of guy.
2002. Actually, that was a weird line even in 2002. I think this couple is supposed to have a Depression-era vibe to them, so grain of salt, I guess, especially when you see how the rest of this turns out.
I was forced to leave my home. I'm lost without her. I can't bear to face the truth that I'll never see her again.
One of the things hinted at in this episode is that Kitty and Bunny might have a romantic relationship, and one of the things I surprisingly like about this episode is you can kind of see it either way. Usually I'm like, okay, if they're supposed to be in love, just say they're in love, but I think because of the issues they're tackling in this, you can take out of it no matter what way you're close to a person or what way you love a person, if this is happening to them, something should be done about it. What I like about this is Kitty is in a house with a dog, which she made very clear she can't stand. But then on the TV, you see Courage watching a show where dogs and cats are attacking each other. It's clearly a comedy, but it sets something off in her. I think there's a lot of things in this episode for people who have gone through something very traumatic. Something that can be very simple can suddenly trigger a terrible memory. And I think in shows, particularly animated shows for kids, which there aren't a ton that talk about this kind of thing, but I can think of, Batman the Animated Series with Harley Quinn. Usually the idea is domestic abuse is wrong and the toll that it takes, but I like that this sort of shows how certain prejudices are passed down. Kitty's clearly been scarred by this event. She can't look at dogs the same way. Even a show that's just there to make people laugh, she takes it very personally and lets out her anger on Courage there that's done nothing to her at all. But it's that passing down of hatred. It's somebody has given you something terrible and you gotta get it out of you, so you take it out on something or someone else. It's definitely not an element you think Courage the Cowardly Dog would address.
What you hiding from anyway? Can't eat the food.
I simply don't wish to face reality.
And this is the first time the mask is addressed. He asks, why is she wearing the mask? And she says she doesn't want to face reality. The idea of wanting to hide behind something. You feel exposed, so you want to, retreat behind a different identity. You feel more protected if someone doesn't see all of you, both physically and psychologically. You create a new reality, a new you, one where these terrible things that happened in your past didn't happen.
We all must face reality.
Like how you sneak extra sweets when no one is watching.
And I really like this, where she's trying to say something very comforting and say, oh, we all have to face reality at some point, which is true. And she points out the various ways that they've been manipulating themselves and one another.
You say you can fix anything.
Lying to themselves to save themselves from pain. And she's essentially asking, what's the difference? I think it's also her way of taking control of something. When you lose control of something that, stays with you for a long time, you try to take control of other things. And I think by trying to show that she has power over them, she knows things about them. Don't you bring up stuff about me, I know stuff about you. That gives her the illusion of more control, which is something she seriously needs, but she's not getting it from, the right places.
Do you think I eat too much?
Nah, the masked lady. I can fix anything.
Now keep track of their story, because in my opinion, there's a little bit more relevance to what's going on with them than even I thought of when I first saw it. You see them awake in bed, and they're talking about what she said. It's with them, clearly, and I think it comes up, and it does sort of tie into the themes and ideas very cleverly in a little bit here. So here's another example of combining comedy and tragedy. A gift was given to her, and we see it's from Bunny. It's probably the only thing of hers that she has to hold on to. But it's a cat toy, and she even plays with it the same way a cat would, just sort of bouncing it back and forth, and that's both really silly, but really heartbreaking. And I especially enjoy this. I don't even know if this was intentional, but she has a mask under the mask. You see her ears are covered. There's some sort of cloth underneath the mask that she already has. And I think that just shows even more how deep inside she's willing to hide and wants to hide or even needs to hide. And this is where, for me, it gets a little confusing. If I'm reading it right, I haven't seen all the episodes, but if I'm reading it right, there was a previous episode where he had an encounter with a cat. It was a bad encounter. It was the supernatural entity, so I think the idea of seeing another cat immediately makes him think this is bad news. This is going to be a real bad foe to have around. So he goes and he tries to tell his owners that, that there's a cat in there and she's going to cause all sorts of trouble. As usual, cool, they don't care, and they don't listen. I hope that is it, because I like the idea that he has kind of a prejudice then, too, where he sees a cat, he immediately connects it back to a bad memory he had as well. And he has kind of this outlook on her, well, she's going to be bad news, I want no part of her. He tries to get rid of her.
All we know about this poor girl is she's from the wrong side of the tracks.
And this is another element, I won't lie, kind of confused me too. When he thinks of this monster on the other side of the track that looks very much like her, there's a couple ways you could read it. You could read it as that's how he pictures her. You could read it as that's how he pictures the scenario, the problem. Like there's just this issue that's going to eat away at them and it's going to destroy them. Or it could be that's a monster similar to her that's also from there and is going to come looking for her and looking for them and destroy them. Either way, it works because it's still a problem he's trying to solve. That there's something that's a risk that he feels like is going to destroy everything, so he's trying to resolve it. By the way, I know I'm not talking as much about the backgrounds. A lot of them are similar to backgrounds we've seen in other episodes I've talked about here about Courage the Cowardly Dog. So if you want to hear more detail about that, you can. A lot of these are similar color schemes and so forth, but these are all still visually gorgeous, like Courage usually is. This is most likely a send-up to the painting Nighthawks. Not exactly measurement by measurement, but I'd be pretty shocked if the creators of the show don't know that painting.
Bunny's in a bad way without Kitty.
And just to make things more confusing, a rat runs this diner. Like, what? I don't even know what to read out of that, man. There's already so much to read out of this episode. Like, does he see that toy rodent as insulting? I have no idea.
Bunny's guy, Mad Dog. He didn't like him being so friendly-like. He's one nasty piece of jealousy.
So there you go. Mad Dog, the boyfriend, being jealous of them being friendly. Like, it technically, can be a friendship. I mean, but it feels very much like a strong nudge-nudge.
I can't open the door. No! Kitty was right about you. You can't fix a thing.
You want some chocolate?
Alright, so I have no idea if this was intentional, but what I sort of get out of that scene in comparison to the scene before and just sort of the themes and ideas of this is that, once again, Kitty is sort of taking the pain that she has and she's passing it on to others. She's giving them something to get angry about, sort of passing on this anger. And at first they're all right, but then they start to pass that pain back and forth between each other as well. Suddenly, in this panicky moment, they start cracking at each other and they go against what they just said. And, that can lead to even more anger, even more pain. So again, whether that was intentional or not, I feel like the idea of just pain being passed down, mutated and turned into something else, I mean, that's definitely a part of, situations like this. So here you have Courage. He's not going to take the mouse to the police anymore. He's going to go and try and save Bunny. You see the sort of wrong side of the tracks, and again, just wonderful colors here, even though the main color is clearly green, but it mixes so well with these blues. You even get a hint of purple in there, and that makes the lighting inside the building there, the red, just stand out in contrast. So the imagery is threatening, but the colors are beautiful. You see stuff like that in Suspiria, or I mentioned Dick Tracy before. Great opposites you don't usually see together. Beautiful colors, but threatening imagery. So we finally see Bunny and Mad Dog and his gang for the first time, and clearly Bunny looks like someone that's not very happy there, and Mad Dog and the rest of his gang are just absolutely miserable, threatening-looking creatures. I mean, they have no pupils, their eyes are completely red, they have sharp teeth, and they live in a place that also looks very threatening, and this is just an ugly, miserable place, and a show that already has these very creative, dark, and exaggerated backgrounds. This is just so unpleasant to look at, and the scenario is incredibly unpleasant, and the threat, these creatures are incredibly unpleasant, and the little victim there, both her and Courage, it's just seeing them stuck in this terrible looking place. This is not a fun episode. Episodes like Freaky Fred are creepy, but they're funny. This is just so unpleasant.
If I even smell Kitty, I'll bury the two of you.
Remember that line too, because I think they got around a censor through a little clever imagery here. You'll see in a second.
Everything's okay. Okay.
I think that's such a funny way to escape. She grabs her suitcase. Obviously, she's been planning this, but didn't think very far ahead because she's caught very quickly. And I don't know, it keeps cutting back to Courage thinking about this monster devouring his owners, which, by the way, some gruesome imagery there. Just because it's not red doesn't mean that's not pretty graphic. And I think because it keeps cutting back to it during moments where it doesn't really seem to involve Kitty, I don't know, I see it as like the monster of the situation. It's like the problem, it's the issue, this whole thing has just become one giant monster. I could be wrong though, but that's what I read out of it. There you go, burying her literally means burying her, but not underground, just in a giant pot. I think when you hear that line, I'll bury you, that's such an intimidating, horrific thing to say, especially in a show like this, even though it has dark elements. I mean, that's a really gruesome real world thing to say, but then you see it's like a giant pot of dirt. I think that's how they got around the censor saying no to that line, is, well, when we say bury, we mean this giant pot, cartoons. So I think that's their way around it. Sometimes I feel like you can get away with more in a cartoon than you can in live action.
Dog!
Again, you see that prejudice still playing in because of the past, and not even past, the present scenario that they have, and yet she sees that, you know, he's there to help, obviously. And even there with the monster now sleeping in the bed, almost like it has literally consumed the owners, building up inside them and turning them into something else. I might be stretching it too far. But that's just kind of what I'm reading out of it, because I don't know quite what else to read with it. I enjoy you don't exactly know what happened in this fight scene, because there's a bomb, there's arrows, they're knocked out several times. Just had a shovel there you could put together, but having the bomb and arrows just raises so many entertaining questions.
I'm sorry for the terrible things I've said.
That's okay, Muriel.
You see the two of them make up, but again, those weren't huge problems that they had. Those were very small things compared to what's going on with Courage and Kitty and Bunny here. But even on a small scale, you can see the impact it can have, as well as clearly here on a large scale. So even as he gets closer to defeating him, he's taking down the monster a little bit more. He's able to bite the monster. So again, you could take it as maybe just it's where it all started, you know, with Mad Dog doing these terrible things. And again, it's just sort of passed on, wreaking chaos. Get to the root of the problem, pretty much. So, I mean, that monster could be the root of the problem. The scene where he gets hit by the train, even though you don't see anything, is still... You feel the impact of that, certainly, and I get the feeling they threw in this image of him knocked out with, like, the stars and everything at the last minute. Get past the censors and say, cartoons, goofy, haha, nobody dies, you know, kind of thing. But I feel like if they 100% had their way, he'd be dead. And thus the monster is destroyed and Kitty and Bunny get back together. And actually, I love Kitty being on that train. I think that's such a clever, fast way to wrap things up. Because it's both her entrance and exit at the same time in this scene.
Now we can be best friends forever.
See, man, that was gonna be a kiss. That was gonna be a kiss. Look at how they're holding each other, man. It can still be friends, but come on.
Kitty's gone, but she's left something behind.
Muriel, you got a bobby pin?
And it ends on this cute little joke, which, I mean, I feel like it would end on a heavier final image, but the rest of it is so heavy already. I mean, I guess just give a little levity, man. That's a heavy episode, man. I mean, like I said, I haven't seen a ton of Courage, the Cowardly Dog, but I definitely haven't seen one as heavy as that. It's not just addressing a very real issue, a very difficult issue to talk about, but it's doing it both in a clever way, also in a disturbing way. I think a kid would watch this and still be uncomfortable, but not to a point where they'd want to turn it off. They'd still want to see what happens, and there is still a happy ending, you know, the right people get away and live happily ever after. I can't see any kid leaving that episode being like, no, that was a barrel of laughs. That was really cute. Like I feel like they would be uncomfortable, and I think for this issue, that's something where you should be uncomfortable. It's tough to say I enjoyed it, because I don't think I'm supposed to enjoy it. I think I'm supposed to be really uncomfortable watching it, and it succeeded, but it is very well handled. It is very well put together, and I like that a kid can watch and just see it about, two women just trying to get away from a bad guy, but they can also look at as they get older, and hopefully when they get older, you hope they wouldn't have too much knowledge about this as a kid, but watch it as an adult and be like, okay, man, I can read all sorts of familiar things that are sadly familiar, but still deserve to be talked about. And I love to know, because you heard me talk endlessly about what I think that masked monster that he's thinking of is. I would love to know your interpretations of that too, because I tried looking up if there was a clear answer, and I saw a couple different interpretations and people give their thoughts, and I couldn't get a clear answer. So I'm wondering if you know, is it something very obvious that I'm missing, or is it something that's supposed to be a little bit more interpretive? Let me know your thoughts. Hey everyone, I got a couple of these lined up. If there's any particular cartoon you want me to look at as being very dark or twisted, leave it in the comments below. Again, I'm not really looking for movie scenes or cartoons meant for teenagers or older. I'm talking about ones meant for little kids, but still scare the shit out of you. Whether it's an old cartoon or a new cartoon, let me know what you want me to look at.